very interesting, right? Especially like the bureaucracy around how a product can be eligible for NAFTA and like the 0% tariff. Right, but like everything's made elsewhere, but as long as like 65% is made in North America, then they're fine, right? And it's very interesting to me. Where I'm hoping that like I know Trump has made some kind of sparse comments in regards to NAFTA, where I would love to see in my generation that kind of goes away, right? I understand that that would have an impact on things, but as far as local things go, right? Like there's a ton of abandoned buildings, right? Big manufacturing places, here that are just no longer, right? And to get kind of some of those back would just revolutionize Erie as a place.
I'm pretty critical of the state itself. I'm pretty critical of the Department of Community and Economic Development, because it seems like they only pay attention to the community part and not the economic part.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're getting funded a lot of money and you can only create 1% growth per year
it's
for
like,
6 years,
really?
like, what are you doing?
Like, that's why I'm happy that, I really hope that, like, Elon and
the Department of Government, if it DOGE.
Yeah, DOGE, man. I'd be very curious to see what they can find, if anything, or if it's just like another meme, that they've kind of, done to piss people off. Or if it's, I'm looking more into the future, right, and all this wokeness culture and the kids with the litter boxes in school. It gets a little crazy.
I know, dude, yeah, they took it too far. If they were a little bit more measured in their implementation, they probably could have fooled more people into thinking it was okay, but it was like, in a matter of 4 years, we've got... Our prices are twice as high.
Yeah.
We have kids pissing in litter boxes in schools.
Like, it's wild to me.
I mean, it's insanity. And it's like, you really expected people to be okay with this?
Yeah, and
I'm still shocked at how many people were okay with it.
Yeah, like, it's a total, like, Unitarianism, like, style of managing individuals, right? Where everybody is important, and I get that from from a societal perspective, right? That we're able to kind of take everybody and everybody's important, which, they are to an extent, right? But when we're talking about these fringe ideologies, right, such as, on the far left or the far right, like, to me, like, the far right is the individuals who are kind of like pirating that like 2025 movement, right, where that in itself is a little fringe ideology, where the Republicans have went through and done a phenomenal job at dismissing those allegations, right, that it's not so much.
So I don't know if I missed something with this whole thing, but like I looked through the tenets of Project 2025. I went to their website because I was like, what is everybody talking about? I need to see this. And I read through it. Like, there was nothing really that jumped out at me like, this is whacked out stuff. I mean, it was like, close the borders, like,
it seems standard stuff, right, as far as like a Republican doctrine, right? And that's the way that it's portrayed, especially like in the media and the stuff that do it. But when you really sit down and read that 900-page document, there's some weird stuff. Is it 900
pages?
900 pages, right?
So I just read like the bullet points that are like, featured at the top of their website.
Right, and then because there's a lot of like especially women that go into this and are petrified, right, about the result of the Trump election. Which I don't think that they're necessarily wrong. Like, I understand abortion is a a hard-hitting kind of conversation that these people go through, and especially as a man, I'm never going to experience an abortion, right? Like, it's just not possible. Right. And so they're right at the forefront of that issue, right? And pulling that conversation from a federal mandate into a state mandate, right? And there's a whole bunch of different rules and stuff. Like, even I believe it was in Wisconsin over the last week, right? They kind of entered this legislature, right, that was essentially if you received an abortion, I think it was 10 years you would receive if you like sexually assaulted the person, 15 years if you went to a different state to receive the abortion. And so there's a liberal judge kind of going through all of this and is like, do you not see the issue with this? And the guy's like, no, there's no issue. Like, that's exactly. And it's like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Like, it's very bizarre to me, especially as a younger individual growing up with all of this. There's a lot of kind of really odd behavior that is being put into the forefront, right? It's it's not exciting looking at it.
And I'm convinced at this point that there's two sides to the issue, and they're never going to agree on it.
Yes.
Right? There's absolutely no agreement.
Because that's what's so difficult for me, right, as an individual, that you're telling me over the last 300 years that the United States has been in conflict or been in, as a country, that this now at 2024 is the point that we are the most divided nation we've ever been. It
seems like we should have been getting better, not worse.
Yeah,
But here's the problem. Communism. Marxism is the frickin' problem. Because anytime you have a stable, profitable culture, they weasel their way in and they start sucking resources.
Yeah.
And so then you got the people that align with them, and you get to the point where you can't have a dialogue because you have a parasite on your society.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the people that want it to succeed. So how could you agree on those two viewpoints?
Yeah, it's such an interesting piece, right? Like when we're talking about communism in itself, right? Like we're talking about like the USSR kind of whole niche that they went through, right? With Stalin and all that fun stuff, right? Which clearly by the results did not work. Right. Even when we look at like North Korea, right, I wouldn't necessarily know if they're a communist society, right, or a more totalitarian regime.
Right. Well, that's the end. That's the end of Marxism,
right. Exactly.
Right? You have a couple people at the top.
Yeah, like
rich, and then you got the rest of them that are poverty.
Yeah, and then especially like looking through the famines and all that fun stuff that went through, and I think there was a famine in Ukraine caused by Stalin, right, in that whole period where it's just not good.
No.
Where
objectively, it's just not good.
Yeah. Where I understand,
I understand
the look for social programs. Right. I get it. Like as a somebody who lives in downtown, I understand the reason for kind of being able to help out individuals with homelessness, with mental health problems. Like looking through like even in the 50s and 60s, the kind of mental hospitals that they had for rehabilitation. Right. And that was the entire idea, was rehabilitation.
Right.
And we've since now done away with those programs because, frankly,
they shut down all the asylums,
right?
And they let all these people run out on the street,
and exactly. And so now there's a couple of them,
merciful,
right? And I understand too because, like asylums, there was some corrupt stuff going on there, right?
Yeah.
There was people that were not being treated with the same dignity as respect as other individuals, right? Where I completely understand that standpoint, but at the end of the day, right, when we're looking at that idea of getting a place that people who need help can go for help, it makes sense. And I understand that privatized healthcare has tried to make an impact on that as well. Like I know that UPMC has a couple like places locally that you can go to get mental health assistance, right? But it's there's still a lot of it going on, especially with social media and during this whole pandemic, malarkey. I know it's negatively affected a lot of people, especially in my generation, to be able to have a footing in society and be able to grow.
Right.
Like I can't tell you how many times I go to the bar and meet up with old high school buddies that just don't know what they want to do, right? Have no idea, the world is so
and they can't buy houses.
Yeah.
I mean, you got little shacks that used to sell for $150,000, now they're $450,000.
Yeah, I know. Like I bought a house when I was 19, right? So it was like 18, 19, right when I went into college.
Right.
And I got it with me and my four buddies. And I worked throughout, high school and at the beginning of college. I had enough cash for a 20% down payment. Okay. My house was, I bought it for $87,000, right? And which at the time was an absorbent amount of money. I didn't ever think I could ever own anything like that. And then went through and looking back at it now, it's doubled in value, right? I sold it for $115,000, right, at the peak of the housing bubble, and thought like this is the best thing I've ever done. I'm just printing money over here.
Right.
And then to watch it continue to inflate is nuts.
Yeah.
And like there's no added value to that area.
And there's not really that much added income either. I mean, people are really not making that much more money than they were back then.
Right, exactly. Like it's the same thing like when you talk about like the housing crisis in Canada. It is nuts. right? Like when we're talking about and primarily it's affecting their bigger cities. So your Torontos, your Vancouvers, your Edmonton areas, right? Like the housing has got so bad that I'm pretty sure it's the top 10% of income earners can afford houses.
So it seems like there'd be a huge surplus. So I guess the question is, why isn't there? And the reason I think maybe is private equity.
Yes, exactly, right. So what they've done is they figured out a way to subsidize their housing market, right? And so what they've done is kind of the cause and effect, right, of housing in itself, right, is you have to have buildings, you have to have people to buy them, right, the supply and the demand, right? And so a lot of elderly folk, as Canada has an aging population, has put a ton of their resources and all of their money into housing, right? So how did this kind of all happen was right during the 2008 financial crisis, when U.S. house prices dropped, 20 or 30% during that time. Canada was able to, and a lot of these other kind of socialist-style governments, right, were able, so you're talking UK, Australia, Canada, were able to put that bubble off. And they put things in place to make sure that this doesn't happen and their people don't lose that value. And what that's done is since snowballed that into today, where ever since COVID happened, their prices have continued to balloon. Right? So when you're looking at renting an apartment in downtown Toronto, it's going to run you $4,000 for a 500 foot, square foot apartment, which is nuts.
Yeah, it is. Well, no, I've heard of these firms like BlackRock buying up huge
it's
tracts
nuts.
of property, and even in Erie, I think they've been buying them up. But to me, it seems like that could have that inflationary effect if they're buying up all the property and there's not much left for private people to purchase anymore.
Because it's nuts to me, when we're talking about that big kind of economic sale of PE, right, private equity and single family housing, right? I understand that this is an avenue to kind of obtain more money for it, but it's also the effect of it, right? Where I'm really surprised that the U.S., either the government or state or local governments haven't stepped in and kind of put a cap on this thing or stopped it, right? Or because you would think with all the zoning laws and everything that we have, renting specific homes, even Airbnbs, right? When we talk about that, their whole impact on the economy has been drastically,
for sure.
Went through and kind of done some different things for different organizations,
right? Which I'm sure that's affected housing prices too, because you have had this huge influx of people buying that extra house to rent out as an Airbnb, and then that does reduce the actual supply in the market.
Yeah, the good news is about Erie, right, is that we're not necessarily a vacation haven for most
as much as they want it to be.
Yeah, I know I know as much as as much as the peninsula is great.
That great.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, Erie's, I'm not moving, don't plan on moving.
Erie. I love it.
But I'm not.
And the peninsula is great for us. We're happy to go ride bikes around there.
But am I buying 8 residential units right around the peninsula to rent them out?
You could go down to Florida or somewhere.
Some place that's warm at least 80% of the time. Right. It's a lot of my buddies own second homes and stuff like that. They'll own them in Arizona or Florida and then stay in Erie during the summer and then go there for the winter. Right. Where it's not really happening, where people are transitioning houses, I'm going to buy a second house in Erie.
Right. Nobody's doing that.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
So your company manufactures custom seating for wheelchairs.
Primarily, so we're essentially kind of exactly what you stated, right? We're a manufacturer of custom molded wheelchair cushions. And so with that, we have different products that complement that line, right? So when we're talking about custom seating, right, there's real kind of 3 ranges of seating for the individuals that we are seeing, right? Everything is going to be billed through insurance. So we're not a e-commerce site that somebody could go and buy our product off of. You essentially have to get recognized by a specialist that this is what you are going to need, and then that's when we would step in, right? So those specific products in itself are our signature fit line, which is essentially our custom molded cream of the crop. Right. This is a 1-to-1 tailored unit to
so they
that
make
specific.
A bust of their.
So So for that specific product, what happens there is It's super cool. What they use is essentially, we call it like a molding system, all right? But the molding system is just a fancy name for essentially a beanbag chair with a pump on it. Yeah, and so it's essentially like exactly what you're seeing here, that the orientation that the person will be sitting in. And so ours, we have to be super adjustable because we see people of all shapes and flavors, right? And then so they then seat the person in, and then they'll have a licensed kind of technician go through and do all of the adjustments and stuff, right? So you'll, kind of the primary focuses are your ITs, your ischial tuberosities, right? And those are your butt bones, right? And so that's where a lot of pressure and everything is going to be. And then we're able to tweak and do everything that you could imagine with that molding system, right? So if you have kind of pelvic obliquity, right, meaning that your one side's higher than the other, the legs longer than the other, right? If you're sitting crisscross applesauce, if your torso, your spine is completely bent, you name it, we've done it all. And then so once you have that person, molded in that position, because there's two real kind of styles where you're either accommodating or you're fixing. Right. And so when you're fixing, it's primarily pediatrics, young kids that you can have an impact on their growth. When you're accommodating, it's an individual who didn't get the care that they needed, that are 25 to 40, that you're able to go in.
Make them comfortable.
Yes, exactly. Right. So they can live out the remainder of their term being comfortable in the position that they're in.
Right.
And so once you kind of go through and have that individual taken care of as far as their positioning and everything goes, you close the valves off, the thing comes rock hard. And then you're able to transfer them out, and then you just scan it in with your phone. It's super cool.
That is super cool.
So it's in like the technology we use is called Scaniverse, right? It's a free iPhone app that you can use. So as long as you have an iPhone Pro, you can use the thing. And so you can use them for small scale, large scale.
So
doesn't
people
matter.
can So, but you need an actual technician to go on
so when we're talking about our specific process, you need somebody licensed, right? You need an OTP, an RTS, kind of somebody who knows how to take care of these individuals, right? To make sure that they're seated properly and with the right care. Because if you do not, what ends up happening is kind of bad medical things. So when we're talking either like when they're not seated correctly, the most common one is called pressure sores. So essentially what it is I was talking about your ITs. That's a real common area for this to happen. And essentially it's the bone is too close to the skin and too much pressure is there. So when we're talking about us individually, like how you'll go and adjust in your chair, what that does is it changes the shear forces on your skin, right? So shear is a super big impact on the actual piece of your skin. And so when you're just doing slight adjustments or when you're driving and you move, right, that's offloading those shear forces and resetting it. These individuals don't have that sensation. So they don't understand. They not that they don't understand, but they can't feel the impact that it's having.
From their body, right?
So having a licensed individual do this stuff negates all that fun stuff from happening. And once we kind of do that, scan it in on your phone, then it gets sent to us and we take care of the rest. So we, it's a very efficient process because we have to be efficient, because when we're talking about kind of zooming out in the grand scale, we're just a small piece of that individual segment of all the care and the stuff that they're going to need to kind of be a successful member of society. Right. It's like a specific use case to highlight, which most Erie people might know, is Ian Malashevsky. All right, so Ian was a prep wrestler that had all these scholarship opportunities and whatnot. It ended up breaking his neck. He had a C5, C6 spinal cord fracture, which means that everything essentially from the neck down, he's toast, right? He can't move. So he went from this, kind of wrestling phenom into, being paralyzed. And so it was... it was a real freak accident, right? Essentially, the guy kind of grabbed him and then, kind of rolled him over and then landed on his neck, and that was it, right? Which happens, all the time, right? When we're talking about
that's like my worst fear.
Yeah, man. Like it's the same. It's the reason why I never had a trampoline as a kid.
Exactly.
Was to to make sure, because my dad was aware of these issues, and made sure that I was the farthest thing from that. And so when we're talking about Ian, right, he went through, did all this rehabilitation things, and then had to get a wheelchair to be able to move around. So he had a power chair and everything. And then his mother I ended up seeing him and kind of talking to him a little bit, and he was not happy with the seating that was provided for him. So then we ended up, just kind of getting in conjunction with the customer and the company that he was using and got him in with his system. And then essentially once a year he comes in, says if he's got any issues or anything, and then we go modify, take care of it. He's done. Like right now, Ian is at I believe he's at Harvard for law school.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like he's really kind of taken this unfortunate circumstance of his and made the most of it all. So like he, I believe he was at Florida State. That might be incorrect, but I believe he was at Florida State and then ended up getting into Harvard Law to be a lawyer. And totally different path than I guarantee what he was expecting, out of life, but has really not let this disability affect him in any ways besides like physical.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's very impressive.
Some people, right, they get dealt a bad hand and that's what they that's their ideology.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I mean, because when you've got some brain fog going on or whatever, and I'm gonna go take a jog. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you even do? You know what I mean? Like you can't exercise.
Yeah, it's a complete and utterly unique world that adds so much perspective, especially for a younger individual like myself, to be able to see the life that I have, right? And to be able to not only, all of the good fortunate thing that's happened to me, but just to appreciate the small things.
Right.
Like I'll go to different nursing homes or different care centers and see an individual who isn't cognitively aware, that has no idea what's going on because they have, a specific set illness that they've had since a kid, right? Or it's a degenerative illness that's only getting worse. And to see that and to know that I'm going to have a positive impact on that individual's existence is such a unique feeling.
Yeah, very gratifying. Yeah,
that we've been able to, not only for the people that I've explicitly seen, but everybody, that has used one of our products, it's either positively impacted them in hopefully multiple ways. Right. That at the end of the day, it is a medical device. Right?
Yeah.
That its entire function and purpose is to have a positive impact on the less fortunate members of society.
Have you guys ever thought about offering this to I don't know, people that sit in computer chairs all day?
Dude, definitely.
You know what I mean?
So
custom.
Yeah, so that's so the biggest kind of market for us, especially, sky's the limit when we're coming to seating, right? When we're dealing with seating, there's so many different avenues for us to explore, right? What we've done kind of internally is just focus on what we're good at for right now, right? Especially with the amount of growth and everything that we've been able to receive since COVID, it's not necessarily in our best interest to try and divest all of our kind of sources of income right now. But when we're talking about it, one big thing that's that really have had an impact on the organization is truck seats, actually.
Sure.
So long haul truckers,
yeah.
right? So we partnered with a specific kind of local company that has a trucking department, and so they went through and they had all these damn problems, right, with their truckers, right? The biggest one was the amount of insurance claims for somebody that was sitting in a seat for over 10, 15, 20 years, right? And now they have to take liability because they ran through and didn't take care of themselves properly outside of the truck. So now it's a truck issue, right? And all of these things, and it gets expensive fast. Right. So we were able to kind of go in and design some custom units for these individuals, right? And so since we've done that, you essentially for us to do it right, it's different than the way that we did it, right? Essentially we would manufacture for a specific set of manufactured trucks, like when we're talking like Peterbilts or Patriots, right, or something like that. And then you would have a housing unit that you would just take theirs out and put it in, which then increases our liability, right, if a truck crash happens or something happens on the seat, right, where we just went through and kind of gave them a specific cushion to sit on top of, right, and then they strap it down.
That's the easy thing.
And the truckers have been pumped. They were super excited with all of that fun stuff.
This was it Bernhardt?
It might have been. So I'm good. I don't think it was.
I've worked with quite a few of the trucking companies in town.
Because I know the Barnharts are close kind of family friends of ours. We actually rent a building from them.
Okay. All right.
And so the oldest Barnhart is a really good human. We enjoy their presence and their opportunities greatly.
Or so like the dad. I mean, I know like Tim.
Tim. I think it's Tom. Tom Barnhart? Is he the?
There's two. I think there's two brothers.
Yeah, there's two brothers and then the dad.
Yeah.
Right, and the dad is primarily, so we rent like kind of right on his property. And so he's got like these two kind of warehouse kind of spaces, and that's where we keep kind of all of our milling operations. Right. So, like our building is small, right? When we're talking about like the grand scheme of manufacturing, like we're, sub 6,000 square feet, right? So being able to have that additional space, and he doesn't, we're not paying $5,000 a month in rent for this place. He treats us fairly.
Yeah. Yeah, so like when we were talking before, you told me about how you were able to grow the revenue probably by about $10 million in, I don't know, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, really the biggest piece was right in like 2019, 2020.
But without changing the footprint of the facility.
Yeah, everything stayed exactly the same size of everything, which has been nuts. Like especially like just from a parking standpoint, right? Because we went from having way too many parking spots to now we're at the point where I'm working with the Harbor Creek Township to get a second parking lot kind of set into place, right? Because we're having overflow parking issues and whatnot, which is fun because then the trucks got to come in, right, and the 18-wheelers got to come and unload material, and we're getting trucks in every day, right?
That's incredible.
So it's super cool.
So how many people are working there now?
So right now, I have 45.
Okay.
Right, and we're pretty much 30 in-house, and then 15 who travel out and about all over the United States.
Okay.
And so the 15 we have 2 that are salaried, and then 13 is independent contractors, and then 30 in-house employees that pretty much show up every single day to work.
So the companies that you're targeting with your sales team, you mentioned like local ones, like Wheelchairs and More. So really people that sell the wheelchair.
So we're primarily, everything that we do is business to business, right? So the biggest kind of 2 companies that we deal with are New Motion and NSM. So New Motion they're a national conglomerate of salespeople. So what they've done is a really big consolidation piece. It's the same thing that NSM or National Seating and Mobility has done. And they've went through and kind of consolidated all of these mom and pop stores. So when we look back 10, 15 years ago, there was a ton more of these smaller kind of medical distributors, right, that sold oxygen concentrators, wheelchairs, table trays, you name it, they had it. If you needed it for any sort of customization or specialized care, they were the people you went to. And so NSM and New Motion has bought all of these up, and they have a structure that they use, right, for franchising, right, that majority of franchisees do. And it really went through, and then we go through and do business with those guys primarily. Okay. So they'll go through, do all the heavy lifting for us. They have their kind of book of business that they're going to go through, their Rolodex. And then we go through, and we're just a small part of that, right? So they'll go through and trick out an individual for everything that they need, and then they'll contact us with the custom seating that they need for that individual.
So I wonder what percentage of the market that conglomeration addresses. You know what I'm saying? Because like Wheelchairs and More, for example, they would be separate from that, right?
Correct. Okay. Yes.
So every city, I'm sure, has, or
some,
cities
right?
Some.
And so especially a lot of the bigger cities, their NSM and their New Motions will, really kind of go in and compete with each other in there. So they'll buy up all the smaller ones and then either prop them up and, put a new banner out front, or shut it down and have them use their other facility just close to the way. Okay. Right. That whole kind of side of that specific piece, right, is not something that we're allowed to touch into, right? Like from a business standpoint, we're not allowed to open, I guess. So we are allowed to. It's frowned upon, I should say, right? It's not that we're going to be breaking any international laws by doing so. Just the customer and kind of the people that we're using their book of business.
Right. They aren't going to get their cut.
Yeah, we cut them out, right? So it doesn't make sense. There's a lot of that's happened before in our industry, was that there was a specific company that went through and did that and subsidized and pulled in all of their salespeople and then sent them all back out with their own shirt, right? And that company is no longer in existence.
So are you the sole custom cushion provider for?
So there's 3 of us. So there's us. There's Ride Designs, which is located in, I believe they're in Denver or in Aspen, Colorado. And then there's a bigger company called Permobile, and Permobile does a lot of the power stuff. They're I believe they're a Swedish company, and they have a company called Autobach. Okay. And so Autobach does the custom side, Ride does the custom side, and then we do the custom as well. Gotcha. And then so those are kind of our 2 biggest competitors in it all. Okay. Where when you look back 15 years ago, there was 40 of us.
Really?
Yeah. And so now, as we've kind of grown, right, we've been able to absorb all those kind of other smaller guys in that whole instance, and done a good job at kind of keeping a customer first mentality with it all.
Gotcha.
Right. A lot of these bigger individuals, kind of have their proper channels for things, right? You have to sit on the robot for 15 minutes on the phone and then go through, and then maybe you can get to somebody. Where for us, right, it's very important to myself that whenever anybody calls, they talk to an individual. Yeah. Right. And
that's hugely important.
Yeah, that level of care to the individual, right? The person that's calling us really matters, right? That it's not that they're just a number that they're going through. Right. They're going to talk to a specialized individual about the issue that they're having, right? Whether that's in purchasing, quoting, something to do with our CAD system, right? If they're not happy with kind of the shape that they're receiving, we can go through and get that piece resolved.
So what's your path to, more market share? Obviously you have the sales team out there, and I almost wonder, does it make sense to start focusing more on the consumer, even though you're not selling to them? Because they're the ones that are going to advocate to the person that is selling to them.
This piece has always been a area of kind of growth for myself, right? My primarily focus and everything is in the manufacturing and everything in-house. So it's is a world that blows my mind, really. So like from a business perspective, the biggest thing that we can do is talk to these, they're called rep groups. Okay, so they're a business that has all of these different representatives that have a book of business and contacts that they go to, and then so we can go through and talk to them, get a partnership with them, and then receive that business. Gotcha. Like an example of that is we hired a group that covers kind of the middle part of the state force called Target Mobility. And so Target has 8 reps that cover everything from Michigan all the way down to like Alabama. And then they go through, and those are individuals in way that we can kind of grow business. Same, there's a rep group in Texas that covers the entirety of Texas. And with that, so, kind of to go through a little bit more into that, the biggest piece for us is word of mouth, right? You would be, especially like I was absolutely blown away by the amount of business that we receive just because, say your buddy works in custom seating and you're saying, hey, I'm not happy with the business that I'm receiving from so-and-so, who are you using? And they're saying, I'm using, PRM, and they've been treating us very well. You should give them a try. Okay. And it's that, like we've grown from that size solely based on that information. Like we go to the national trade shows and all that fun stuff, right? Get our name out there. But our biggest kind of ROI on that stuff has all been through word of mouth and just kind of treating people the way they want to be treated, like people.
Yeah, that is interesting. So what if you're the person that is in a wheelchair? You're not happy with whatever you got before.
Yeah.
You're probably going to start Googling, doing some research and stuff like that. So if you do come across your company in that search, what's their path then to get
so this is a kind of a unique circumstance. So usually I would say, okay, when we're looking through the business, there's three main people that we need to make happy, right? Like this kind of transitions into like implementing a new product into the business, right? So you have, first off, the end user, right? The individual that's actually going to be using it. Then you have a nurse, an ATP, some sort of specialized medicine individual.
Right.
They're going to be the person that's actually going to recommend that product or our product or any sort of custom seating manufacturer to that end user,
Gotcha.
right? Because most of the time, I would say roughly 60 to 80% of the time, the person isn't cognitively aware, right? So they don't know, kind of what's going on, right? So they have that nurse or anybody kind of speak on their behalf.
Right.
And then there's the dealer, so the individual that's actually going to be paying for this product. Right. And getting all of three of those kind of figured out in piece, especially like as somebody with a background in marketing, it is nuts to be able to implement a product successfully and get it into kind of the realm of the business. Yeah. It is super cool, right? So when we're talking about kind of just like, to highlight the piece that you brought up, right, about just a specific end users not happy with their system, right? They would have to go and talk to their kind of specialized individual that they do for seating, right? So when we're talking like locally with, let's say like Blackburns, that individual is Steve Frangione, right? And so Steve, I know that there's a couple more sales guys there, but we primarily deal with Steve. And so Steve would kind of go through like, hey, I'm not happy with this thing I need, I want this. And then so Steve would say, okay, no problem, or are you sure, these are the, the kind of the pros and the cons of the whole situation. Right. What do you think? Right. And then once he gets it, then it has to go from, insurance, to approvals or to state Medicaid or, Medicare, and then kind of go through and flow within the organization.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it is a very kind of complex process within itself.
Yeah, there's a lot of different potential targets for your marketing.
Yeah, there's a ton, right? And especially that we're so small and so specialized, like for us to kind of market on the news or radio stations or sports games, right, isn't necessarily, worth the squeeze, right? Because there's such a small percentage of those individuals that could have an impact, right? So that's why like our biggest marketing expenses are at these specific trade shows, right? So like the biggest one is in Pittsburgh actually, right? And it's the ISS, the International Seating Symposium, and so they do it once a year, and everybody from essentially all over the world comes to ISS to kind of go through all of the new cool things that are in the industry, in seating, in kind of any sort of kind of care in regards to the individuals, that need that, postural support.
Right.
Right. So we're talking like sip and puff systems, beds, like 3D printed molding systems. There's some super cool stuff in our industry.
And so you guys, your process is to actually you're machining the foam, correct? Yep.
Yes, sir. So it runs through a kind of a unique kind of CAD process, right, that we go through and use. We use a super cool software, so it's essentially mesh based. So when we're talking about CAD software, everything is usually solids, right? Those are like SolidWorks is a specific master cam, which essentially you're just kind of creating a solid, right? Either it's either imported to you and somebody already did it, or you're manufacturing it, right, from your with your design engineer. And so we get these scans in straight from your phone, so we have to use a specific kind of a mesh style software so that we're able to go through and get that one-to-one image and then cut it, trim it, and then put it in a G code so that the mill is able to run it. Right. And so we use everything from 3-axis mills to 6-axis robots to a 5-axis mill to be able to kind of accommodate all of the fun nuances and needs. Yeah. And then with the milling standpoint, one of the first kind of big projects I had in my role was I recognized that for each one of these wheelchair cushions themselves, it gets a board with it, right? So it gets a customized, custom tailored board, that's how the cushion is going to mount to the wheelchair.
Okay.
And so it has all of these special options and everything that specific user at the end of the day needs. And we were building all of that stuff by hand. Right, we were essentially using a table saw to cut everything, a drill press to drill all the holes, do your center lines. Everything was done by hand, right? And one of my first projects was I bought a 3-axis ATC, which is a 3-axis with an auto tool change unit on the backside. And so I had to figure out, I got a total crash course into tooling and how different tools affect different materials and all of your feeds and speeds and RPMs into things and how 2-flute, 4-flute, 8-flute, ball end mill, all the different stuff, what everything is, how it all works, and then I had to figure it all out.
Yeah.
Right. So I went through and had to implement, essentially this machine to do all of our sheet goods, for the machine or for the business. And it was such a cool feeling to get it and to see it, and especially to see nowadays that the guys are sad if they don't have their boards because it's going to add time into their process, right? And they get miffed because we measure their KPIs, right? Their key performance indicators based on the amount of product that they're building, right? And so if that variable is out of skew, they get sad, and which they should, It's
do they get bonuses on?
Yeah. So we do a kind of how we do like our bonus structure in itself is I think it's quite unique when we're looking at the grand scale, right? So what we do is we're really a big component of team first, right? We want to make sure that, at the end of the day, the team itself is working towards the right direction, right? So when one person bonuses, everybody in the company bonuses, right? And so with that, we have different variables attached to it, right? Did you call off? Right, and then that would affect your bonus. And then same with your KPIs, right? So if you're not here or you're not producing the amount of units that is required for somebody with that specific amount of work or like time that they've been here, then that negatively impacts their KPIs. And so we've done a kind of a fantastic job of going through that, and then we tier the bonus structure as well, right? So if the company ships its specific number, then everybody who's eligible for the bonus gets that bonus, right? And so we do it, we have a specific number that's, kind of hit for internal pieces, and then that's set at like $2 an hour. Right, will get added directly into each individual's pay, and then for every like 5,000 more that we ship, they get an additional 50 cents added. So like right now, everybody, like we've been set at $3.50 an hour additional to each person's pay based on the amount that we're shipping.
That's pretty significant. That's cool.
So it's super cool. It's super cool to see kind of the impact that's had on everybody, and at the end of the day, like the business is getting its first, right? That's how the kind of bonus structure is all set up.
Right.
That if the business gets paid first, and then we're able to kind of go through and make sure that all of the employees are taken care of.
Yeah.
So it's
you
super
kind
cool.
of have that company-wide component, but then you also have individual components.
Because you run through, right, where the issues that we've ran into, right, is that you'll have guys that are pulling more weight than other individuals, right? And then to make sure that accountability piece is set in place, we do that primarily by number one, KPIs, right? We track everybody, especially with our ERP system, right? That makes it extremely easy to be able to see and go through. And then same is attendance. Right. I don't know if you've had that at your place where, especially with the work from home kind of piece, right? Everybody, doesn't want to go to work, right? Or they do want to go to work, but they want to work 410s, or they want to work, 8/5s, and everybody, it just gets all out of whack, right? And I understand that, as a younger individual, I don't have as many responsibilities as far as family, dogs, other individuals in my life that I'm responsible for their well-being. Right. But at the end of the day, I know that, out of the 30 people that we have, 25 have families and don't have an issue coming to work, right? Where those people that, try to push that and have that whole piece, right, it's, we wanted to make sure that, number one, they're not abusing the system, right? That they're just calling off every other Wednesday because they want an extra day off, right?
Because they have like Dart League on Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly, right? So we go through and we try to, do our best to essentially just make it fair, right? Make it fair to the people and make it fair to the organization.
Right.
And, we've had people that have worked there for, 19 years, right?
Yeah.
It's they seem to be very happy with how we're kind of running things and taking care of each other.
Right. Yeah, it definitely sounds like a good culture, and it sounds like you got some things figured out as far as motivating employees, which is good. I mean,
because I know
the tough part.
Yeah, a lot of people really struggle with that avenue, right? Yeah. Especially that most individuals don't necessarily have the way to figure out what motivates their people. Right, when we're talking like an upper level guy trying to figure out why his 45 welders are pissed at everything all the time, right? That individual might not have a good handle as to what their problems are or
right.
what kind of things that they're doing, right? I found that for our specific case, right, people are either monetarily motivated, right? They're coming to work and they want to get more money, right? Or they're motivated by time off. Right, if you're able to give them 4 10s instead of 8 5s, they'll give you everything they got, right? And you don't have to pay them $1 more, right? And it's very interesting to really kind of have an understanding of each individual and to see what motivates them, right? While also
and those are 2 of the possible too. I mean, you've also got advancement, which is important to some people more than anything.
Definitely, right? If they can grow within an organization, that is massive, right? Especially when we're talking about the younger individuals who want to stick with a place and see kind of what they can do, right? It's sky's really the limit when it comes to it, right? But sitting down and having that initial conversation with that guy and figuring out what he wants to do and why he wants to do it is crazy, right? It has such an impact on not only your relationship, but it can transition directly into the organization.
Well, what is your process for kind of assessing what is the key motivator for a specific person?
So we go through and we do our best to find that out in our 90-day kind of introduction period. Okay. So we go through a 30-day, a 60-day, and a 90-day review, right? And we make sure that our expectations of the employee are completely clear, right? I know that a lot of organizations struggle with that piece, and especially on onboarding new individuals because of that exact problem, right? To me, if I can't figure out what makes that individual tick by the end of the 90 days, then I did my job wrong, right? I need to be able to understand what motivates them as an individual. Like some of it's family, right? They want to be able to provide for their family. Some people just want extra money, right? Whatever that is. And then figuring that out, and then really kind of what our best use case for that, right, is to just sit down with them, right? Not a lot, right, where it's not like I'm taking a half hour or half a day, out of their schedule to go and, have lunch and figure out what kind of person they are, right? But more just kind of sitting down and asking kind of some pointed questions, right, into why do they get up in the morning? Yeah. Right. And it's kind of those.
So it's
abstract.
kind of an explicit answer that you're looking for there. That's what I was kind of wondering. Is there like something that you're inferring from a group of things that they said, or is there like an explicit? So what motivates
you? I struggle with the inference piece, right? Yeah. That's a real kind of fault on my side. Is I'm extremely black and white, right? I do not. Same way. Yeah, like I am very non-emotional, extremely pointed in my questions, in my problems, and the opportunities that are in front of me.
It's which like is when my wife expects me to have inferred something that
dude, exactly.
Like, you never told me to do that.
That's why why would I do that? Yeah, it's like as a single 24 or a 25-year-old, I'm very glad for my mental health that I do not have that problem. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I would love to have that, issue, but like I don't, so I'm counting my blessings.
Just enjoy it while you've got it.
Yeah.
There's benefits, they make you grow. So,
for sure.
I have 2 kids now too, so that's awesome. Makes you grow. But, But definitely change your priorities around.
Like I noticed it exactly like with my dad, right? Getting to talk to him, right? Because when he started this business in 2001. All right, to give you a little bit of background, he was he was climbing the corporate ladder at this big kind of conglomerate, and it was called Invacare, right? Which Invacare was in 2000 a $1 billion corporation, right? Okay. They were responsible for it was over 60% of any sort of wheelchair that was manufactured in the United or used, bought, sold in the United States was Invacare. Yeah. To this day, if you go to Walmart, Giant Eagle, and look at the wheelchairs that they have in there, all Invacare chairs, right? And so we worked there, and then ended up getting put on a PIP and whatnot, a performance improvement plan during there. Knew that his time was limited, and so my dad was 31, I think 31, 32, somewhere in there, and knew that he was done, right? So I was born, and my brother was born, and my sister was on the way. And he's essentially dealt his hand that he's got no income.
Right.
So he's got, he had severance, right? He had 6 months worth of severance to kind of get through. And like every normal dad, with no income, he decides to buy a business in Erie. And so we picked up and moved from Avon, which are Akron, kind of in that area, and moved to Erie, where we ended up buying the business.
Gotcha.
And then that was in 2001, and we're in 2024 and still doing it.
Okay.
And it's I can't imagine. So my dad originated in Kitchener, Ontario, and so he ended up. So that's how he ended up getting into it. Was when he was a younger individual, he worked for a company called, I believe it was CPSC, and they were exactly kind of like the NSM and the New Motions are today, right? Where they're kind of a business that goes and sees these individuals.
Right.
So that's how he got his foot in the door, and then they got bought by Invacare, and so they gave him opportunities that you can either quit and find a new job, or you can move to the United States. And so he was like, "See ya, I'm out." And went to the United States, which as a 25-year-old, I can't imagine just picking up and going to Mexico.
Right.
It was.
Fortunately, it's probably a little bit more of a relatable translation than the U.S. to Mexico. But, definitely.
Actually,
these days, I don't know. Canada's getting pretty wacky.
Yeah, Canada's getting fun, man. It's getting fun. And so they went through, and he kind of did that whole, experience and got and made a new life for himself. And then, God dealt that bad hand, and then re-looked at the cards that he had and realized this is what I'm doing. And then went through and made it happen. Yeah. And then so, my entire kind of philosophy into all of that is that I get to work, directly with him, right? And so at the end of the day, it's not necessarily about me, right? It's about all the other families that are working for the business, and then to be able to retire my father. Yeah. Right, which is a super kind of humbling and very cool experience, because a lot of there's more people that have this opportunity to work at a family business. There's even less that make good, and there's less than that are successful. Right. And so I'm trying to do everything ever since I was 16 to do that successfully, right? To make sure that I'm a part of the the second generation that didn't blow it up. Right. Which is
don't be that guy, because there is a lot of
there's a lot,
especially the third generation.
Yeah, third gens.
That's when it really goes downhill.
So it's a it's a super fortunate and super unique opportunity, right? That I understand, it's not necessarily as good as being a self-made man, but at the end of the day, I get to work with my dad. It is, it's time that I know I'm never going to get back. It is such a cool feeling, right? To be able just to kind of see, and then at the end of the day, I get to, deal with all of the struggles, with my father, and to, kind of be able to enjoy all of the successes with him. Because I know at some point, like, guy's not going to be here, right? I might as well, do what I can while I can.
According to my math, he's not that old, is he?
He's 50,
52?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's he's doing just fine, But
awesome.
That's why I feel fortunate enough to have these opportunities, right?
Yeah.
To realize that he's he's not like 95. I can still go and travel with him and do whatever. Like, the guy still plays hockey, plays golf all the time.
Oh, good. He plays hockey. Yeah, I'm a hockey player too.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a few years since I played because I had some knee issues, but I'm itching to get back.
Yeah, so like I played hockey since I was like 2 until I was like 22.
Okay.
And then quit and stuff right when college and work really started to pick up.
Okay.
And he's never stopped playing. Like, he, to this day, he plays every Thursday.
It's an awesome sport.
Yeah, it is.
I love it.
Like, especially going to like Otters games, it's a riot.
We have
such
season
a cool
tickets.
time.
We go to all those.
Yeah.
But no, I love playing it, man. It's such a blast, such a aggressive sport.
Yeah.
You know, it's like.
And usually there's some pretty solid guys, right? That's why I know he loves to do it. It's just because the guys that he plays with are really good individuals.
Did you play some adult league stuff here?
Yes, sir.
What league were you in?
So I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a little crazy. So I was a goalie, right?
Oh, okay.
So I got to play I was in A League primarily.
Okay.
And then, because I was so just to add some context, so the two guys that I played with growing up throughout my entirety of childhood were Jake Kuharski, who got drafted by the Chicago Blackhawks.
Okay.
Played D1 at Providence. Played at where else did he play? Someplace in Canada as well. So D1 athlete. The other guy was Jared Fisk, who played D1 at University of Niagara. So just phenomenal athletes, and it's like those are the guys that I'm competing with as a teenager. And they're both like 6'5", 6'6", like just units of men, and like I'm not. So I knew at an early age that my calling was not
professional sports.
Yeah, like don't get me wrong.
Although you can always look to Alex DeBrincat.
Yeah, dude, exactly, right. That's where, don't get me wrong. Like if I tried, probably could have went farther than I did.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like I knew that. They were probably going to get there a little faster than I was.
Right.
And not saying that I still, didn't show up and put up a good fight, but, they were getting scouted. They were playing on different teams and stuff in high school. Like, I just wanted to play high school hockey.
Yeah.
Like, my dad and I had that conversation vividly. I remember like it was yesterday. We were right in the JMC parking lot, so right at the zoo there. And he's like, hey, if you're going to do this, you need to be committed. Because, if you're going to try, you got to give everything you got. And I'm like, Dad, I think I just want to play video games with my friends. And he's like, that's totally fine. And he's like, that's probably the better decision. And I was like, all right, cool. Then I was like 13.
At least for him, man.
Yeah.
These hockey parents, when their kids are actually looking at prospects, man.
Is nuts money, right? And especially like,
time.
Yeah. Like I still have like relatives and stuff that live in Canada. So to hear that, like all of their kids are going pro and, all this stuff because they live in Toronto and Toronto's a good hockey city and all of that fun stuff. It's super cool to, and like realistically, like none of them are going to go professional or go anywhere. Like the percentage is so small for athletes to be a professional athlete.
Right.
And but no, they're all committed, man. You ask them, their kid's the next phenom, and it's like, that's tough, dude. That's tough. Hate to see that, dude. I don't as a kid, you want your kid to be happy, right? Whatever that is. And I don't think, for most kids, success isn't the measurement of happiness, right? It's just being able to be around the right people,
Right.
And getting to do that, getting to see him succeed is always nice, right? But I don't necessarily know if it's necessary for, the success of that individual.
Not for everybody.
Yeah.
I think there's some people, I'm one of them, and I've always had this sense that I need to do something impactful. I have to. Yeah. I have no choice.
So that is the exact main reason that I got into, why I kind of dove headfirst into my dad's business, was exactly that, especially a lot of my kids my age want to have an impact, right? That is such a core thing for them, right? So for you, right, what did that look like for you?
Well, I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about health, fitness, and even I'm very educated on the subject, I think, compared to most people. I kind of I'm super excited about some of this administration that's coming in. RFK is one of the people I'm very excited about because his stance on vaccines, on nutrition, just the absolutely abhorrent way that America's treating their health. If we can fix some of that stuff, I'm going to be super happy.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I love manufacturing. I work with a lot of manufacturers. I'm really, really good at helping them grow and become more profitable.
Yeah.
And I also feel like that's something that's bigger too, because manufacturing isn't just a sector. It's not just a business. It's the sector. I mean, it is the staple of the economy. I mean, this is what makes us run.
Yeah.
If you don't support manufacturing, you're going to tank your economy. And so I really like to support these guys, and I also kind of get pissed off when I look at the way that our state and federal government treats manufacturing.
Yeah, like
from a regulatory standpoint, we had talked about OSHA. I mean, they make it as difficult as possible for manufacturers to succeed, and then they throw a little $13 million, PA state budget, $13 million manufacturing PA program together that then funnels into bureaucracy and maybe makes it to a manufacturer at some point.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to sound critical of some of the organizations like the NWRC, great organization, they're funded by that, but they could use more funding.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of the money that isn't going to them that's being squandered. And so, I just look at that and I say, you know what, we could make PA one of the most powerful economies in the entire union.
Well, to me, right, what's really happened is, I think it was back in the 90s, it was NAFTA, right, the North American Free Trade Agreement, right? And so that whole piece really crippled the Erie's kind of economy. Now, I understand, right, the larger implications of that, right? When you look at NAFTA, right, they were able to kind of subsidize a lot of the, inflation costs, right? When you look at like a car in the 90s versus a car now, it's roughly stayed at the same price, and I think that's a big thanks to NAFTA. But when we're talking explicitly about local manufacturing, it destroyed it, right? Where,
well, yeah, when you look at any economics textbook, I remember learning about this stuff, and how free trade was, just a net positive for the economy. But it doesn't really take into account some of those downstream effects, which is, if you're keeping all the prices of goods the same because these people have lower wages and can make it, well, then you're pretty much forcing these guys also to have low wages if we're going to make it.
Right. It's very interesting, right? Especially like the bureaucracy around how a product can be eligible for NAFTA and like the 0% tariff, right? But like, everything's made elsewhere, but as long as like 65% is made in North America, then they're fine, right? And it's very interesting to me, where I'm hoping that, like I know Trump has made some kind of sparse comments in regards to NAFTA, where, I would love to see in my generation that kind of goes away, right? I understand that, that would have an impact on things, but as far as local things go, right, like there's a ton of abandoned buildings, right, big manufacturing places, here that are just no longer, right, and to get kind of some of those back would just revolutionize Erie as a place, right? It's
our population has shrunk, our manufacturing base has shrunk. Our GDP as a state over the past 6 years, and it fluctuates a little bit, but over the past 6 years, it's about 1% per year growth. I mean, that's bad. That's really bad. And
especially when you're talking that inflation's at like 4% this year. Right.
And so I'm pretty critical of the state itself. I'm pretty critical of the Department of Community and Economic Development, because it seems like they only pay attention to the community part and not the economic part.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're getting funded to the tune of, don't quote me on it, it's $50 to $100 million a year. That's actually more than that. A lot of money. And you can only create 1% growth per year
it's
for
like,
6 years.
Really?
Like, what are you doing?
Like, that's why I'm happy that, I really hope that like Elon and
the Department of Government, if it DOGE.
Yeah, DOGE, man. I'd be very curious to see what they can find, if anything, or if it's just like another meme, that they've kind of, done to piss people off. Or like, realistically, when we're looking at government spending, it is nuts. Like, it is absolutely insane.
Astronomical.
Right? Like, as an individual, as a 25-year-old, I didn't think I'd ever make as much money as I'm doing now. Right? And to think that the government, that I would not even put a dent, like I would be an accounting error on their balance sheet.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
It is nuts. Is so like something just doesn't seem right.
Right.
I understand that they do a lot, right? They they definitely try to anyways. Right?
Try, yeah.
The effort, the hard, the people that they got speaking are speaking some good things, but it's just like, guys.
In my next podcast, I have two buddies that they own Allegheny Woodworks. super conservative, like really cool guys, but they're just, good old school guys that are running a manufacturing business. I'm going to print out the PA 24-25 state budget, and we are just going to laugh our asses off at it.
Yeah.
Because it is insane the amount of money that we spend on things, and it's like, are we trying to be successful or are we trying to fail? Which one are we trying to do?
Like the best thing that I've seen the government do in the last 15 years or since I've been here is this damn roundabout on the
they
bayfront.
love these roundabouts because they have them in Europe. Evidently, we need to spend $15 million on a roundabout.
Where it's like you're telling me that the best use of our time right now is a roundabout.
Oh, and people argue for these things. Oh, well, listen, I've never been stuck at a traffic light at the bayfront in State Street for longer than, I don't know, 2 minutes.
Yeah. Like
you know what I mean? Like it's never happened. So,
yeah, I've never had a 15-minute traffic jam on the bayfront.
No. Evidently there is some window of the day, maybe in the morning or something like that it's a problem. Well, then figure out another solution. Like make the light going in the direction where the traffic is backing up, make it green longer. Yeah. Like something, right?
Like, I'm not a city planner, right? I don't, I'm not sure on that.
For $15 million, I could figure something.
Yeah, for $15 million, I could shape up.
150. No, I'm pretty sure it was like $150 million.
Like, and I get, right? They got to move pipes, they got to do things. Like we got tied into the city sewer, right? And so that that alone was like $250,000 in piping. Right, and especially with the supply chain and all the shit, right, with costs and whatnot.
Right.
But it's like, if it would have cost us like $100 million to tie into the city sewer, like, are you kidding me? Who is affording that? And it's like, the taxpayers. Like, right, got it.
The taxpayers, right?
Got it, dude. Like, love that for me, but it's
well,
it's
interesting.
It's
all just fake money anymore, Like do you have any idea how much we spent in Ukraine?
So much.
I mean,
it's in the billions for sure.
Yeah, like tens or hundreds of billions.
Yeah.
I need to look up this number.
Yeah.
I wish I had like Joe Rogan's like, hey Max, can you look the number for that?
Yeah.
How much did we spend in Ukraine?
Well, and that's it, right? It's like I always thought it was funny. I keep seeing TikToks about like Kamala had she's like $20 million over budget on something, right? I'm not sure the actual specific situation, and. So then the people are like, yeah, here, we're going to round up all this money and send it to Ukraine for you.
Right.
Or like, we're going to send you $75 because people in, I think it was Florida or whatever, wherever the hurricane was, got like $75.
Right.
From FEMA for that. And it's like...
But not the people with Trump signs.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. So they're giving her a hard time about that, And
where was that in North Carolina? Where was that FEMA? You heard about that?
Yeah,
right?
The FEMA stuff, right?
The FEMA worker that said if somebody has a Trump sign, just like pass by them.
Yeah, just don't worry about it. And it's like, okay, dude, interesting, but it's it's a tough world we're living in, man. It's very interesting to me, like even from a business standpoint, right? To talk about all the different set of hirings that we went through. Right, like when I got first kind of in thing, it was right in 2020. Oh, here we go.
Here it is.
$175 billion in aid.
Wait, that's only one of them.
106 went to Ukraine. Holy mackerel!
Wow. So like do this. Wait, there's more of them. There's a whole. Is that the total at the top there?
Yeah.
So 175 plus 106. I got to do this math.
So the spending on aid, right? So what that is saying is that the aid, the total aid passed by the legislation in the U.S. was $175 billion, right, for different reliefs and everything, right? Conflicts, because what did it say? There was one in 2024, one in 2022. From that 175, 106 went into Ukraine, which is nuts. Like, could you imagine, like? Think about like just $1 billion. Yeah. Like, I think that's more money than most people would ever touch in their entire life.
So just for perspective, that amount of money that we sent to Ukraine adds up to about $1,000 per person in the U.S.
Yeah. Like, think about that. Like, that's 300 million cats.
So how many people would have agreed to send $1,000 to Ukraine? Like, if you had just asked them on the street, like, hey, do you want to support Ukraine? give me $1,000.
Yeah, it's like now. Okay, and then
no, they just did it,
and then we wonder why the cost of goods are going up, and it's like but then it's interesting. It's all that it really adds a lot of perspective. Like I feel for the Ukrainians and whatnot. They're war is not ideal from an economic standpoint unless you're a part of the war profiteering machine. But for most people, like all your other services and whatnot, it's not ideal, right? And I get that, but it's just. I don't necessarily understand why the U.S. is the individual to fix those problems, right?
Probably because our military-industrial complex has the most to gain from it, I believe.
Yeah, which is interesting because, I'm pretty sure a lot of the, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure Ukraine has a bit of a corruption issue.
Right.
Right. Like it has had it. It has been aware of it.
And my understanding is that they had the opportunity to avoid this war altogether. Putin said that if you guys join NATO, I'm gonna attack.
Yeah, and they were like,
and they said, "Oh, we're joining NATO," or NATO pretty much told them that they were joining.
Yeah,
and so the only thing that they had to do was not join NATO, which makes sense. I think.
Yeah.
And I think Joe Rogan might have been talking about this too. It's a reasonable ask.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want, regardless of who you agree with. We know that Russia is at odds with NATO. They're enemies. They don't want to be on the same side. So if your biggest neighbor says, "Hey, I'm going to join the enemy," what are you going to say?
Yeah, that's not a good look.
Right. So they could have just not done it.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, we have to deal with this stuff, and evidently we have to pay for it. So.
Yeah, it's exciting, man. I'm really pumped for my kids to be able to kind of take that cost on and run with it.
Well, I don't think that cost is going to continue into the future with the new administration.
I would think the current or the new administration is going to have a bit of an impact on that stuff. But it's going to be exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. As a younger individual, it's going to be exciting.
That's been my biggest fear over the past 4 years, or even my oldest kid is almost 4 years old, but just thinking about the kind of world that it's gonna what is it gonna look like when she's my age or when she's 25.
Mm-hmm.
With as fast as we've gone down this road of self-destruction, I can't even imagine.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
The weirdest thing to me, right, is I've never seen like a real good politician either, right? Like when we're talking about, even like if we're looking at presidency, right? Like, talking with, my dad and my mom, right? My mom has been in the United States, her whole life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And hearing about the different presidents, and I understand that, the presidents weren't perfect individuals, right? Is it like, JFK and Reagan made some mistakes and whatnot. And those people, but like we haven't had like a real good president, right?
That's what I always say. Like, why can't we just go down the stats? And okay, so let's pick somebody with a really, really high IQ, somebody with a really good, linguistic capabilities.
Yeah.
Somebody that's proven themselves in business, understands money, understands how to negotiate with people. Like, what are the core elements we need in somebody? Let's have some people take a test, and then whoever does the best on the test is the person that gets the job.
Yeah.
Like, just like any other job in the world.
Yeah.
But instead, we say, okay, who can get the most money from people that are going to require a whole lot of things from you once you get into office?
Yeah.
That's pretty much all we say.
Yeah, it's a whole big kind of, there's such an economic realm in regards to the presidency. Like, I'm pretty sure the Democrats raised close to $1 billion, right, for Kamala. And it's like, like for her to lose, like that's tough. Like I know, and I know Trump's in the same boat where you have all these super PACs and all this malarkey, right? To say that you can't make ads, but you can do it. You just have to use this, separate entity, and it's like, guys, like what are we doing here?
Yeah,
it's very interesting to learn about that whole.
Hey Max, can you Google something else for me? Who is Trump's biggest donor? I believe he got $100 million from a Jewish guy. I can't remember what his name is. Trump's biggest donor for the election.
This would be interesting.
Okay. who do we got here?
Yeah, click on that one. See, that's not an ad.
Top contributors. Okay, so Timothy Mellon.
I don't know Timothy Mellon.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, we get a nice ad. Like America First, right? That's building America's future.
Yeah,
Those are all.
Those would be small donations going into nonprofit.
Look at that.
So that's kind of cool, though, to see these. British American Tobacco. I'm not sure about that one, but I mean to see kind of just like regular. Oh, that right there, that Anderson. How what? $7 million. No, I want to see who's Timothy Mellon.
Dave, let you click on him. No.
Timothy Mellon.
Like Carnegie.
Because you just wonder what are we getting into here, right? Because nobody just gives you $150 million for no reason, right?
The grandson of Andrew Mellon, the heir to the Mellon banking.
Oh, banking. Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's. I don't think that's Carnegie Mellon, because that was Carnegie.
Yeah, it's the Mellon banking fortune.
Huh.
All right. So, banking, I guess, we've been propping up banks for a while. So
yeah, since 2008.
We have to expect that to continue to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
But, some of these, you always got to look at the donors, because that's going to tell you what the agenda is going to be.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting.
And it is good to see that a lot of those are just private companies that, didn't want.
Yeah, needed a tax write-off,
Yeah.
It's interesting. That's where I'm pumped. We're not big enough that political organizations are coming knocking on the door.
Right. OSHA might. But
yeah, OSHA would be the only one that give a shit about us, man. That's so funny. No, wow. Yeah, it's interesting, dude. Like even how the climate has changed, right? When we're talking about like hiring processes, right? Like my first real kind of introduction into my realm was hiring for our second shift. Yeah. And the amount of people that just like would schedule an interview and not show up was nuts.
Oh, I know.
Or like would take the job, like would come to the interview, take the job, and then just not show up.
Dude, since COVID, it has been an absolute
shit
show.
It is. We were at like the lowest where I was like 10% hit rate. We'd schedule 10 interviews and get one guy, and then if that one guy showed up for the job, was a 50-50 chance.
And am I right that it's because in order to stay on unemployment, you had to show that you were applying for jobs?
Oh yeah, it's the same for us. What the biggest piece is we like construction guys, right? Because they know how to use the tools, they know how to measure, do all the fun stuff, right? Because especially for building wheelchair cushions, it's not a specialized trade, right? This is all stuff that we have to educate them in house to be able to get them to be proficient, right? So they can have all this background and everything. So as long as they know how to read a tape measure and do some cool things, we're good, right? And
are you guys hiring now? Are you looking to hire?
Not right now.
Yeah, for the benefit of the listener.
Yeah, no. So right now, usually we just post all of our stuff on one of the job site websites. It's
okay.
What is that? I can't remember.
Indeed or something.
Yeah, Indeed. I think it's Indeed. Yeah. And but no, primarily we hire like lower level kind of shop floor guys. So we start them at I think we start at 18 an hour, and then we have that bonus program, right? So with $3.50 on that. We also do like $1.50 shift differential if they work second.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. So we do, we try to, we understand that shit's getting expensive. Simple as that.
I know.
Right?
Yeah, I mean we try to pay our guys as much as possible.
Yeah. Especially that
you can only go up so high though, right? You still got to make money, but it's like they still can't buy houses.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it is frustrating. I wish I could pay them enough money.
Yeah, like you can pay a fresh out of college grad $65,000 and they're never getting a house.
Right.
It's like,
which is sad.
What?
Yeah.
Like you would think that you flash back 15, 20 years ago, a college grad who's making $65,000 or the equivalent is doing just fine. Mm-hmm. They can buy. They probably have a kid and can get a house. Yeah. Like that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's quite disappointing to me, honestly, as a member of society, where I understand that it's on if you just pay people more, then that resolves that problem for the short term. But at the end of the day, there's got to be a long term fix, right? It's the same with the COVID money, where all it's done is inflate asset prices, because the majority of the people that got it put it into something that they can hold into, like into the stock market, into gold, and into assets, right? And so, like a lot of the stock market was propped up with that information. Like I was guilty, I put $2,000 into or how much we got from the government subsidy thing.
A lot of people went to Robinhood. And
did the GameStop bullshit and whatnot. I did. I put mine into Coca-Cola. Which was smart. Warren Buffett. Which was great, dude. Which was great. Coca-Cola went from $600 a share. Right now, it's sitting just under $2,000. Where it's like, it's nuts. It's nuts. Where if you told that kid that, like, hey, you're gonna like $4 extra money on this, he would have called you an idiot. Like, that's not how the stock market. I'd probably pull that stock. No, dude. Exactly. He's like, even like a lot of the healthcare providers that do the Ozempic shit. I know that he's made specific statements that he does not like that at all. Right? It completely defeats the purpose of losing weight if you're just taking a pill or taking a shot.
Yeah, I think some people need it for whatever reason. But I'd wager to say 90% of the people taking it don't need it.
Yeah, like everybody that I know, like social media wise, that's using it is not due to the fact that they don't have the discipline. Right. It's not it's not that they don't know how or they can't. It's that they're not. Right. It's a lot different. In that realm. Right. Which is interesting to think about, really. But if we kind of circle back into the whole like hiring process, right into that, like even getting like people and whatnot in, and then once you get them in, I can't tell you how many times we've had an individual work one day and then halfway through just leave on their lunch break and just not come back. Yeah. It's quite interesting to that
is so weird,
and that's normal to me, right? As a kid, I just thought that's the way it was, and my dad's like, because I thought there was problems with how I'm hiring, like how I'm posting the job. Is there problems? Like I try to make sure it was as truthful as possible, and then get it out there and get them in and show them what we do. And I thought I was doing something wrong, or that there was something like glaringly wrong with the organization that I couldn't recognize or didn't recognize. Yeah. And he's like, no, like this is just the way it is, man. Oh. I'm like, what?
And it's expensive to recruit too. I mean, that's not a cheap venture.
Indeed is nuts. Yeah. Nuts money. Yeah. Like their balance sheet has got to look damn good. Oh yeah. And it's wild. I know. It is wild.
Yeah, some days you just miss the old yellow papers, If you're looking to advertise a service, put it in the newspaper. Yellow pages. Yeah. If you're looking to hire someone, put it out in the newspaper. $100, call it a day. Yeah. But now it's like you got to pay Google $20,000 a month to get leads, and then you got to pay Indeed, $5,000 a month to get.
That's why, like we pay people well, right? But we run into problems that we're not getting great candidates, right? And it's it's not that we're not using them, right, or not using the thing, but like most people don't know about us, which we like, right? We like the fact that we can kind of fly under the radar. We're not causing any problems, right? Some organizations, it's beneficial to be on the front page of the news and on this other stuff. For us, we just want to be a solid member of society, not cause any problems for anybody. Yeah. And which is difficult then, because then nobody knows about us. Who the hell wants to come work for somebody you don't know? Right.
No, yeah. I mean, I never heard about you guys until I did some research. But it's a significant sized company.
Mm-hmm. Like which is exactly kind of what we want. Right. We don't do marketing, we don't do anything, and it's because number one, we don't really have to. Right. Yeah. We've been fortunate enough that the word of mouth pieces went so positively well, and that there's turmoil within our industry that it sparked such growth for us. But like when you think about an organization, like we don't have $1 million marketing budget. We're not out on foot passing out banners. We're not running commercials during the Super Bowl and that shit. It's really kind of worked out for us. Just to the biggest staple for us is just say what you mean what you say. Yep. Right, and then that transitions greatly throughout the organization.
I wanted to hit on this real quick before we wrap up. When we were talking about your marketing earlier, it kind of occurred to me that you could get quite a bit of bang for your buck by just publishing content, attracting people that are looking to, they're having an issue with because you said, 70% of the market's addressed or doesn't actually do the research themselves. Mm-hmm. I would assume that 30% number is still pretty big.
Oh, yeah.
And so just publishing content about, how to deal with this physical issue. Can it help you align your spine? Can it, make your life easier?
Because getting our name out there is interesting, right? Because it's such a fine song and dance, right? That you don't want to be the center of attention, but you want to get out there to the right people, right? And it's a fun kind of piece, like especially like content wise, like doing like TikToks and that shit, right? Especially for the younger kind of generations on all that fun stuff. For us is very unique. Like I wrote an entire business plan right when I was like 17 for the business to do a total social media push, right? To do the entire thing. And my dad was like, "We're not doing this." Yeah. And I'm like, "Pops, like I'm telling you, man, this is the future." And he's like, "Yeah, piss on it." Like, no. It's like, focus your energy.
Well, now you're vice president, so maybe you have a little bit more
where we do, like we haven't done any of that. Like even like YouTube videos on specific things about how to use the product, how to service it, right? All those like little self-help guides, right? Where our competitors do that stuff. And so that's why we just kind of show it to them, right? Where they're just like, "Hey, you're trying to do this is roughly the same thing," right? And so getting our own kind of footholding on that whole thing is definite room for improvement on that side.
Well, you know where to find me. I'd love to help you guys out in some of that stuff, and I have some ideas I think could be helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
But no, man, this is a great conversation.
I
love how more and more, like, we are here to talk about manufacturing, but I love talking about the issues. Yeah. Like, let's talk about the issues that are really affecting people and really affecting manufacturing companies.
It's interesting to me to have a voice with it all. Yeah. It's super cool. Yeah. Awesome. But no, I appreciate you having me on. This was awesome, dude. Yeah. Thanks, man. Great talking to you.
You too.
Definitely.